Do you have a DonorsChoose.org project that needs funding? Today's sponsor is Advancement Courses, and they are donating 10% of their sales until September 28th to DonorsChoose.org projects. And if you're needing professional development for yourself, you get 20% off their 200-plus online PD courses using this special code just for 10-minute teacher listeners. So stay tuned at the end of the show. Supermuch. Improve your thinking about learning. This is episode 344.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
So we're at ISTE 2018, and we're talking to Tim and Jody Green about Supermuch. So, Jody, what is #Supermuch? And I do want to say that you are an academic coach and educator in California. Okay, so what is Supermuch?
So Supermuch is the idea of making something so much better than good, so much better than awesome, that it becomes super much. And it's a happy accident that came about during a Q Rockstar TOSA event in California.
Oh, and we love the Q Rockstars. Shout out to all those folks.
Exactly. How do you not love Q Rockstar?
I know it.
And so I was so excited about being a part of this and getting to present at this conference that I walked out to the car and I was so exhausted. And I just said, I was trying to say, I'm so excited about this weekend. And I said, I am super much excited about this weekend. And then I thought about it for a moment and I was like, that's the best word ever. And I need to make this a thing.
Yeah.
So everything, just that whole weekend, we just made #Supermuch on Twitter. We just made that trend and it was just really, really fun. And I decided that I wanted to really take that idea and apply it to what teachers are doing in the classroom.
So, Tim, you are a college professor at Cal State Fullerton. How does this apply to what you do?
And again, the idea of Supermuch is trying to make great experiences for your students so that they want to be there and it's exciting. I mean, I teach online, so I try to do that with my students too, give them those experiences where everything's super much. But one of the things that we're talking about, trying to make the classroom super much, is what we're calling the distance educator mindset. So really trying to get teachers into that mindset where they bring in, we'll really realize that distance education is not just completely online. It's not just a one-fits-all kind of thing, but bringing in those distance education experiences into their classroom to make it super much.
And you got to relate before you educate, right? And, you know, a lot of folks with e-learning, they just copy and paste a bunch of stuff online. And the best e-learning teachers I know really connect with their students, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. And part of the distance educator mindset is a set of dispositions and skills and attitudes that we want teachers to have that help them to bring those effective and super much distance education activities into their classroom. So you got to be good at content delivery. You got to be good at engaging your students. So that pedagogy, assessment, and building community that you just mentioned. So all of those things come together to build the kind of distance educator mindset.
So, Jody, you know the risk of the buzzword, right?
Yes.
Because you can have buzzword bandits where they steal the buzzword, but it means nothing.
Correct.
So give us an example of where Supermuch really meant something.
I would say that for me, this has been kind of an awkward year, right? Where I haven't been in the classroom as much because I took a 6-month interim assistant principal job at a middle school. So what Supermuch became this year was when I would go into classrooms and I would see the engagement of students happening just by what the teachers were doing, not trying to be Supermuch, but the experiences that they built for their students in their classrooms. So perhaps it was a breakout EDU that they were running with their kids, or possibly it was when teachers were allowing their students to have choice and opportunity in what they were creating. Maybe it was a maker activity that was physical. It could have been a digital activity that was a digital maker space type of activity. And that's where I saw the Supermuch happening this year. I'm very excited next year with my students and my teachers, which is the entire district, to start to bring the ideas of the distance educator mindset and Supermuch together to make it something that just grows in our district and allows our students those opportunities.
Well, because every classroom now is pretty much bricks, which is the physical classroom, and clicks, which is the online classroom. We've got bricks and we've got clicks. So I find it interesting. A lot of people, take the classroom and then they try to apply it to distance education. But truly, when you have a new form with new technology, you have new pedagogy. So, Tim, what are some of the mistakes that you think are happening in distance education, and how can this Supermuch distant educator mindset approach help?
Well, I mean, I think you mentioned one of the things, like thinking what you do in the classroom can one-to-one translate into the online, and it just doesn't work that way. One of the biggest things I find for teachers who do distance ed experiences is giving up control, giving students more choice and more voice. And that is one of the hardest things for teachers who haven't done it, to give up some of that control, because, I mean, we're teachers, we like to be in control, and we like we like things to go a certain way. Yeah. And so when you have these experiences, bringing others into your classroom, maybe someone from an expert, an author, into your classroom, or doing stuff with a different classroom, maybe across the other part of the world, you're not in control of everything. And so having that idea of, I'm not in control of everything, let's go with it. And also, I'm going to give my students some choice and voice. That right there is at the heart of the DE mindset, but it's also something that's very difficult to get into teachers' heads.
Okay, Jody, you travel back in time and you talk to Jody on the first day of your education career about being Supermuch. What would you say to her?
So that's actually a funny question, because my first teaching experience was in an ESL classroom here in Chicago, actually, where I was dropped into this room after school started with 20 different students who spoke 10 different languages. And I walked in thinking I was going to get to, communicate with my students in Spanish, which I spoke, and I had nothing. I made up all of my curriculum. I had a basal reader, and I had some social studies help, and I had a little science kit, and I had the math book, but I didn't have anything that was really guiding me.
Wow.
So my whole classroom was a makerspace before that even existed, because I had to make everything up. So I think that when I started my career, I was Supermuch, for sure. And when I got to California and standards happened, and I was teaching middle school, and I had all of this set curriculum that I was required to teach, and I had to do test prep all the time, that person is a totally different teacher than the person I was my first 2 years. And if I could talk to her, I would tell her to let it go.
But then some people would say, well, you're going to lose your job.
Right, exactly.
Because they're going to let you go.
Right, exactly.
If you let it go, they let you go.
So I think letting go of the structure that I was given and making sure that I stuck to content standards and not necessarily what the book was telling me I had to teach on that day, that's what I would go with. And over time, I developed into that teacher where it was all standards based, and my colleagues were doing one thing and I was like, I'm teaching the same standard, but I'm doing it this way. I would tell 20-something-year-old Jody to stick with that method.
And to be a little bit of a rebel.
Right.
And then it was okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it is okay, because ultimately, when you get results, people stop arguing with you.
Right.
I learned that because I caught a lot of grief my first 5 or 6 years of truly innovating. But once they saw it worked, they kind of lay off, don't they?
They do. Well, because, the proof is in the pudding, right? I mean, you just have to make sure that what you're doing is research-based, that it makes sense, and that it works to move your students forward.
Totally. Okay, so Tim, I want you to think about distance education and what it could be, because right now, a lot of folks went and implemented e-learning. That was the buzzword 8 years ago, right?
All right.
8-10 years ago.
Yep.
Everybody was going to put in an e-learning program, and a lot of people put in e-learning programs that were no good. Let's just be honest.
Sure.
They didn't teach. Only people who learned were people who could teach themselves if they had a textbook alone in a room, or if they had an e-learning textbook alone in a room, right? Okay, but we're better than that now,
Sure,
right?
Yeah, of course we are.
So what can true, awesome distance education be?
So I think it's a different focus from let's taking an e-learning package, or let's going all in and dropping into our classrooms this package that's pre-made. And again, it's about the experiences. So let's think of distance ed as experiences that we can do for our students. Those smaller activities that could take 30 minutes that we expand beyond our classroom. And that could take on many different forms. I mean, one we all know about, mystery hangouts, mystery Skypes. There you go. You have a DE experience. Those kind of things, if you're uncomfortable with the whole DE world, that you can start building those into your classroom. And once you've built those kind of things in, then you move on. you start expanding it. But starting with the experiences is where you should start. Not those. Yeah.
So many people are so excited about Flipgrid. I mean, isn't that one of those things that distance education is just going
100%?
Yes!
Yeah, and that's a great tool too. I mean, and it's something that doesn't take. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of effort to do it and do it well, and get your students engaging with others, with each other in a distance ed experience. So those kind of things, those are the things that I suggest.
Okay, so how, Jody, can Supermuch educators, they say, okay, this is cool. I like it. I want to do it. How can they engage? Use the hashtag on Twitter. Do you have a lot of people who converse on the hashtag on Twitter, or how do they connect with you?
So yeah, for sure, by using that hashtag on Twitter. We just sort of started that, hoping that it will go viral a little bit now. So it was back in January, we used it a lot, and then it sort of has trickled in. And so I'm hoping now that more people are learning about being Supermuch, that will they'll start to share their Supermuch experiences on Twitter.
So you're watching that, and if they hashtag Supermuch, you're going to connect.
For sure.
Cool. Well, you need to start a Supermuch chat, don't you?
I think I do.
Yeah, I think that's exciting.
In all my spare time.
Yeah, and you're still like all of us in our spare time. Well, I think Remarkable Educators, one of the things I like about this is the authentic conversation that we've had. A test for a buzzword is if people never talk about the challenges. And I think that having honest conversations about that we're actually teaching, that we're actually holding kids accountable for excellence, but that we can do more. We can be Supermuch. We can do more. We can take it to a higher level. We can excite learning, and we can be better educators. And I love this connecting with distance education, because honestly, a lot of us are blending our classrooms. And I think the effective distance educator has a lot to teach those of us who are blending. We can take the distance piece to impact our online piece, and then our face-to-face pedagogy. There's a lot of research on that. We've really got to blend our classrooms together. But remember, I always say, you got to relate before you educate. So remember, it's about those relationships and connecting with your kids. And it's Tim and Jody Green, hashtag Supermuch. From now until September 28th, Advancement Courses, an online provider of professional development for K-12 teachers, is donating 10% of their sales to funding DonorsChoose.org projects. Go to advancementcourses.com/give to submit your project today. And if you're in need of professional development, the 10-Minute Teacher listeners like you can get 20% off any online courses with the code COOL20. That's COOL 20. With this coupon, a 3 grad credit course for continuing education, salary advancement, or recertification is only $359. So go to advancementcourses.com/coolcat to learn more, and make sure you use that coupon code COOL20. Never stop learning.
Thank you for listening to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. You can download the show notes and see the archive at coolcatteacher.com/podcast. Never stop learning.